President Tsai Ing-wen visits the outlying island of Kinmen for the 65th anniversary of the start of the Second Taiwan Strait Crisis. Will he or won't he? Terry Gou also visits Kinmen and continues to eye a run for president.
Paraguay is a major beef exporter, but where are these cows destined for?
Plus, if you're afraid of heights, look away from this job in the green energy sector. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Taiwan is marking 65 years since the beginning of the Second Taiwan Strait Crisis. During the crisis, Taiwan held onto key islands, preventing a Chinese takeover. But the threat of invasion has not gone away, a fact that was in the background of this year's commemorations. John Van Trieste has more.
President Tsai Ing-wen and presidential candidate Hou Yu-ih exchanged brief words. Tsai's Democratic Progressive Party and Hou's Kuomintang are often bitterly at odds. But this is the sort of occasion where country comes before party. The two politicians are on the island of Kinmen, governed from Taiwan but within sight of the Chinese coast. Wednesday marked 65 years since China launched an attack on the island, which it hoped would be a stepping stone to Taiwan itself. Despite intense shelling, Kinmen held out. And this conflict, the Second Taiwan Strait Crisis, ended. Tsai and Hou came in person to pay respects to those who died in the attacks.
今天的稳定繁荣都是来自于在座的护国英雄，以及每一位为了守护家园而牺牲的英烈。
我们非常感佩，也追思当年在金门的金门牺牲奉献奋斗底下，捍卫了中华民国的安全，守护台湾的家园。
But the threat of a Chinese invasion has never gone away. And with just months until the next presidential election, Tsai Ing-wen's opponents continue to take aim at her China policy. Threats from Beijing increased drastically since Tsai took office in 2016. At a memorial in Taipei, Taiwan People's Party candidate Ko Wen-je had this to say.
我主张降低两岸的恶意螺旋增加交流对话，优先处理民生议题。我们的立场坚定，但是也保有弹性。 这才是确保和平的途径。
Now, over half a century after the Second Taiwan Strait Crisis, the question animating the country is the future of Taiwan's relationship with China. Klein Wang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
While Tsai and Hou paid their respects in Kinmen, Foxconn founder and presidential candidate Terry Gou was also visiting the islands. And he used the occasion to emphasize his own plan for cross-strait peace. Ed Moon is in Kinmen with the story.
This is Terry Gou. He's the billionaire founder of one of Taiwan's biggest companies, Foxconn. They make everything from iPhones to electric cars. But today, Gou's not playing the role of businessman. He's here as a potential presidential candidate.
Taiwan and China, war coming. Okay, the feeling is smile. It's like war.
Gou has come to Kinmen, the closest piece of Taiwanese territory to China, at just 10 kilometers away. He's here on a key date in Taiwanese history, the 65th anniversary of the last major conflict between Taiwan and China, known as the Second Taiwan Strait Crisis, when Chinese forces launched a major artillery barrage against Kinmen. And Gou is using the occasion to remind Beijing of Taiwan's willingness to fight and the need for talks to avoid another conflict.
台湾人民 绝对不会主动挑起战争，但也绝不可能怯战。和平是我们的信仰。唯有和平、民主、自由的意义才得以被彰显。
Gou made his fortune largely in China, where many of Foxconn's biggest factories are located. It means he's had to work closely with Chinese officials. And he sees himself as capable of striking a peace deal with Beijing, if given the opportunity. Gou tried and failed to win the main opposition Kuomintang nomination for president, and ever since has hinted at an independent run.
Terry Gou has kept Taiwanese waiting for a long time to find out whether he'll run for president, and it's clear they're going to have to wait a little longer to find out. But his vision for Taiwan is a country that's much closer to China, and he wants to use the islands of Kinmen, just kilometers off China's coast, to achieve that.
The latest polling suggests if he runs, Gou would come fourth with about 9% of the vote, well behind the frontrunner, Lai Ching-te. But crucially, Gou would pull support from the remaining two candidates, making it harder for them to beat Lai and his party, the ruling DPP. With Taiwan's opposition divided between the potential three candidates, even if Gou runs, he seems to have an uphill battle to win. But what is clear from today is that whatever he decides, Gou is determined to use his influence and wealth to try and improve cross-strait ties. Karma Xu and Ed Moon in Kinmen for TaiwanPlus.
The Second Taiwan Strait Crisis is the last major military confrontation between China and Taiwan. Liao Long, a veteran of the conflict, recalls the part he played in defending the islands of Kinmen. Stash Butler has more.
65 years ago, on August 23rd, China's People's Liberation Army launched a major offensive against the Taiwan-governed islands of Kinmen, just kilometers from the Chinese mainland. It was the height of the Cold War, with tensions at their peak between Communist China and US-aligned countries, including Taiwan. Some 90,000 soldiers were packed onto the tiny islands of Kinmen to guard against attack. Of those, over half were veterans who'd come to Taiwan after the Chinese Civil War. The rest were native Taiwanese conscripts.
我叫姚云龙，是1924年生。我的家乡是安徽省汾阳县。
Liao Yunlong was one of those who faced the PLA bombardment in 1958. He was conscripted into the Republic of China Army in 1941. He retreated to Taiwan just before Mao Zedong's communists captured his hometown. Like most Chinese soldiers who came back with the defeated nationalists to Taiwan, Liao believed that one day they would take back control of China from the communists. He was sent to Kinmen in 1956. At the time of the Second Taiwan Strait Crisis, he served as the political officer with the 9th Division in Kinmen.
我和共产党打仗的机会都没有，只有83嘛，只有83，我们是个共产党，是和共产党在打嘛。
Liao was stationed on Dadan Island, the island closest to the Chinese mainland. That meant it bore the brunt of the Chinese artillery bombardment.
我不会想到我还能活到今天了，而伤亡很大了。那我能活到今天，都已经是上天保佑了。共产党用那个黄磷弹呐，他就算没有用毒气了，打那个黄磷弹，打到哪个地方都烧啊，那火烧到没有空气了嘛，空气都被那个火吸收了嘛，碉堡里面人都会昏迷，都会死掉，要这样死掉很多人啊。
As political officer, Liao was charged with maintaining order among the thousands of new conscripts from Taiwan.
台湾人多半都是兵呐，都是小兵呐，班长以上的都是外省人。
Liao survived the Second Strait Crisis and returned to Taiwan. He retired in 1973 and married an indigenous Taiwanese woman. He's now 100 years old, but is still active on the internet, where he shares his experiences of war and his views on politics and philosophy. He says seeing Russia's invasion of Ukraine has reminded him once more of the horrors of war.
用武力解决问题是不对的，这是我的看法了。你看乌克兰好可怜啊，老百姓，你看这个人民呐。
65 years after Liao and thousands of others battled for their lives on Kinmen, the spectre of war haunts Taiwan once more. But Liao's biggest wish after a century of life is that the peace he fought so hard for can continue long after he's gone. Chris Ma, Rick E, Sam Hui, Ed Moon and Stash Butler for TaiwanPlus.
China will stage a 2-day live-fire military exercise off its southeastern coast. China's government says the drills are set to take place in Xinhua Bay, which is around 160 kilometers from Taiwan's main island. It comes as several Taiwanese politicians, including President Tsai Ing-wen, are on the offshore island of Kinmen to commemorate the anniversary of the Second Taiwan Strait Crisis. China has ramped up its military provocation of Taiwan since Vice President Tsai Ing-wen returned from a visit to official ally Paraguay last week. That trip saw him make 2 transit stops in the U.S. China flew a total of 45 warplanes near Taiwan the day after Lai came back. Taiwan's Justice Ministry has upped rewards for people who inform authorities of foreign interference in elections. As Rick Liao reports, Taiwan is on guard for Chinese meddling as the vote for its new president approaches.
Taiwanese businessman Lin Huai sentenced to more than 3 years in prison for using cash from China to buy votes in Taiwan's 2020 presidential election. He treated people to meals, hotel rooms and air tickets to encourage them to vote for the Beijing-friendly candidate. He maintains his innocence.
大陆这个政府的钱是给我们台商协会的，而这笔钱跟选举是没有关系，司法不公啦，司法不公啦，我觉得这个阴暗。
Taiwan is now less than 5 months away from electing its next president, and the country is once again on edge over Chinese influence on the elections. Neighbouring China sees self-ruled Taiwan as part of its sovereign territory. Beijing is opposed to the current government in Taipei, led by the Democratic Progressive Party, or the DPP, which maintains Taiwan is its own country. Taiwan's Justice Ministry has also boosted rewards for people reporting foreign election interference.
如果检举境外势力介入选举，我们的奖金最高可以达到2000万。
It's not just vote buying that's put Taiwan on high alert. The country's security services are also monitoring attempts by China to use cultural activities and communication apps to sway Taiwan voters towards pro-Beijing candidates. Taiwan's vice president and presidential candidate Lai Ching-te has said Chinese military activity around Taiwan, which has increased in recent years, also amounts to meddling in elections.
所以在这一个关键时刻，我希望我们在此时此地再次的承诺，不管极权主义对台湾的威胁有多大，我们绝不畏惧退缩，我们一定坚持民主自由的价值，好不好？
It's Taiwan's democratic elections that set it apart from its autocratic neighbour China. And as it heads towards its all-important presidential vote in January, Taiwan will have to be on constant guard to protect its democratic processes. James Lin and Rick Liao for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is taking China's ban on its mangoes up with the World Trade Organization. Taiwan's Agriculture Ministry slammed the export ban imposed by Beijing on Monday. Chinese officials claim pests were found in mango shipments, but started the ban shortly after Taiwan's Vice President Tsai Ing-wen stopped over in the U.S. while traveling to South America. China has issued import bans on agricultural goods from Taiwan in the past. Taiwanese officials say they're part of a pressure campaign and will have a limited impact on mango sales. Paraguay is one of the world's biggest exporters of beef, but because of its diplomatic recognition of Taiwan, it's unable to export to the world's biggest market, China. Sally Jensen was in Paraguay's capital speaking to members of the livestock industry to find out more.
Cattle ranching is in Isidro Medina's blood. He's the 3rd generation of his family to tend to this small ranch in the Luque region of Paraguay near the capital, Asunción. Beef is big business in Paraguay, but Medina is in the minority among the country's ranchers. All of what he produces here he sells locally, but for him there's little security at such a small scale.
La posibilidad que nos queda a los pequeños productores es vender domésticamente. Y todo el sueño del trabajador es vender afuera, que sería más bueno el ingreso económico y así. Pero son grandes productores.
Paraguay exports around 60% of its beef, making it one of the world's top 10 exporters. And almost all of that is shipped to just 5 markets: Chile, Russia, Israel, Brazil, and Taiwan. This year, Paraguay hopes to increase its exports to Taiwan from 37,000 tons last year to 50,000 tons, a huge increase from 2,000 tons less than 10 years ago. The cows here on Isidro's farm are literally on the other side of the world from Taiwan. This is an area dominated by Paraguay's beef industry, but the surrounding countries, Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, ship their cows to a much bigger market, China. China is a major importer of beef from South America, with Brazil and Argentina accounting for almost 70% of its imports. Yet Paraguay exports comparatively little to China, whose major beef buyers, big state-owned enterprises, stick to the One China policy, which claims that Taiwan is part of China. As Paraguay does not adhere to that notion, they won't buy from here. Paraguay has recognized Taiwan as its own entity for over 6 decades. It's one of only 13 countries to have diplomatic relations with Taiwan and the only one in South America. Paraguay's new president, Santiago Peña, has pledged to maintain these relations despite pressure from his country's agricultural sector, which wants to open lucrative Chinese markets to soybeans and beef.
Y vuelvo a repetir, lo bueno sería si podamos vender a China y seguir con nuestras relaciones diplomáticas con Taiwán. Lo bueno era estar bien con los dos países.
Peña has said that Paraguay, quote, would love more trade with China, but adds that the small country cannot rely on a single market and risk being flooded with Chinese goods.
Having a closer collaboration with Taiwan put us closer on a path to develop an industrial sector that we will have it if we have a relation with China.
The industry's biggest players, the meat packers, say that Taiwan should create more demand for their produce.
Porque hoje o Paraguai é país amigo de Taiwan. Então é muito importante que Taiwan corresponda com isso. Dê mais preferência à carne paraguaia.
Paraguay's meat packers want beef to remain the country's economic driving force. But for smaller domestic suppliers like Medina, diversification is essential to make ends meet. He now makes more money selling milk from his dairy cows and participating in horse shows. And as Paraguay looks toward growing its beef export industry to Taiwan, for its smallest ranchers, the dream of selling abroad remains a world away from reality. Scott Huang and Sally Jensen for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, Green Island goes green with a plastic recycling project. Stay tuned.
Start your weekend with a cup of coffee and a moment to reflect on what happened this week.
Hello and welcome.
We've got you covered, from defense and politics to high tech and the arts.
Not just to Taiwan, the whole world is watching.
You make the coffee,
we make the news.
Here's what happened on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Chinese leader Xi Jinping has skipped a scheduled speech at the BRICS summit in South Africa. Leaders from the BRICS countries, comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are in Johannesburg for the 3-day event. Xi was scheduled to speak at the summit, but sent his commerce minister instead. He had joined a meeting with South African officials earlier in the day and had dinner with other BRICS leaders later that evening. A new prime minister has been named in Thailand, just as an old one returned after almost 2 decades in exile. Now the country has an official leader again. Joyce Tsung looks at what we can expect to see in Thailand's political future.
What prime minister do you want to be?
People's prime minister.
A media frenzy to catch a glimpse of Thailand's prime minister-elect, Srettha Thavisin. On Tuesday, the 60-year-old property tycoon from the populist Pheu Thai party secured majority backing from Thailand's parliament to be the country's next leader. Srettha did not formally address the media when leaving parliament, instead opting to give a brief statement at the party's headquarters.
ผมจะพยายามทำหน้าที่ให้ดีที่สุดลืมความเหน็ดเหนื่อยยกระดับความเป็นอยู่ของพี่น้องประชาชนคนไทยทุกคนครับขอบคุณครับ
เศ Tsai's victory ends months of political uncertainty after the unexpected electoral victory of the Progressive Move Forward Party threatened to weaken the political influence of Thailand's military. Tsai and his party Pheu Thai had originally joined Move Forward and their pledge to de-link military power in politics. But after the failed PM bid of Pitalim Juranrat, his party opted to join hands with former military-linked rivals instead.
During the campaign, he kept telling that he's not going to join a coalition or, govern the country together with the pro-military political party. But in the last couple of days, he's already released sort of the speech that this is the only way that can support Pheu Thai to be a government.
For some Thai voters who wanted to see democratic change, Tsai's road to power is seen as a betrayal of what was promised. Just hours after his win, the hashtag #NotMyPM was trending on X, the site formerly known as Twitter. But for others, a sense of relief that perhaps the business mogul can usher in economic prosperity for a country whose all-important tourism industry was badly hit during the pandemic. But just as Thailand brings in a new prime minister, the return of the divisive Thaksin Shinawatra, the founder of Tsai's Pheu Thai party and an ousted former PM, may have been the day's highlight. During his 5-year rule in 2001, Thaksin gained popularity with supporters in rural communities. They are often referred to as red shirts for donning the party's colors. But after almost 2 decades in self-imposed exile, avoiding corruption charges, Thaksin was jailed upon arrival to serve an 8-year sentence, which may be shortened now that his party is heading the government. The 74-year-old has since been moved to hospital during his first night in jail after experiencing high blood pressure and insomnia, according to local media.
The red shirt, they have a close connection. They love Shinawatra families a lot. It's really difficult for Thaksin to leave Pheu Thai alone and then leave politics. I don't think so. He will be playing roles in Pheu Thai and politics, but behind the scene.
As Thailand ushers in its 30th prime minister, some who are familiar with the country's political history may now be feeling a sense of déjà vu. James Lin and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
A new recycling plant on Green Island is turning trash into treasure. The tons of plastic bottles tourists leave behind are now becoming useful and colorful objects. Once again, John Van Trieste has more.
Green Island is taking out its trash. This small island off Taiwan's east coast is a popular tourist spot, attracting around 400,000 visitors a year. And each year, they leave behind over 1 million tons of plastic waste. It all needs to be shipped back to Taiwan's mainland for processing. But bad weather often stops the boats, so the island finds itself overwhelmed with garbage. But things are changing thanks to this man. Josh Campbell runs a new recycling facility, or more of a workshop. Here, he shreds bottles into tiny scraps and upcycles them into colorful, everyday objects like this table and chair. He says his work protects the delicate marine life that makes the island so popular to begin with.
因为很多动物，海边的动物，他们看到这个，他们要吃。
Flower pots, clothes hangers, these are all things Josh makes with these colorful plastic bits. And while the authorities want people to use less plastic, they've partnered with Josh, seeing opportunities in his work.
未来呢，可以有媒合到一些商家，可以使用我们的一个清洁的塑胶垃圾，甚至我们用这个垃圾做成的塑胶粒，可以把它产生成一些商品，然后来开创我们的一个循环的一个商机。
Leaving a beautiful island and the beautiful seas around it that much cleaner. John Su and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Do you have what it takes to work on a wind turbine that's located miles out at sea? Not many people do, but it's in a job that's in increasing demand in Taiwan. Harrell Hughes takes a look at the requirements for this role in the country's young green energy industry.
Strapping on 10 kilos of safety equipment every day is not the standard routine for most people. But for some, it's just another day at work. These are the people who are constructing Taiwan's offshore wind farms. What they do is not for the faint of heart.
它当然要可以不怕高不怕水，要可以耐得住热。你想象一下，如果你今天的工作是负责在超大安装船上面去操作那个吊车， 你要负责在飘来飘去的海上。
Taiwan is working to become more reliant on green energy, and with that comes the need for more skilled workers in the industry. This is one of 4 training centers in Taiwan. The people here are being taught how to work at high altitudes, endure water and heat, and spend weeks out at sea. The high-risk job requires rigorous training. Swimming, safety, and how to use their equipment are some of the most important lessons.
我们有很多那种高处作业，那有可能也要出海去作业。那当然就是这些作业呢，就是会伴随着不同的风险。
But while only a handful of people might seem up to the task, their role is within a growing industry. The Global Wind Organization estimates 22,000 professionals will be needed to meet the demand of wind farms around Taiwan by 2050. The work may be grueling, but the pay is worth it.
做28天休28天的风电技师的话，你现在的薪资每个月大概会有7万、8万、9万，不一定。
As Taiwan continues working toward its goal of achieving net zero emissions, the shift to and reliance on green energy is only set to grow. And that means now the country will also have to find the right people who are able to handle this type of work to make it a reality. Devin Tsai and Harel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally today, we leave you with images of a water jousting competition, part of the Saint Louis Festival in southern France. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.